Chapter 6. I sat in the airless office trailer and stared at Mr. Del Duke. His head was very round. Most human heads are not round. Very, very few, in fact, have any real spherical quality. But this chubby, bearded man with the bushy eyebrows and sneaky eyes was the exception. He had thick, curly hair and ruddy skin, and it looked to me as if he was at least of partial Mediterranean origin. I was very interested in the diet of these countries. The combination of olive oil, hearty vegetables, and cheese that comes from goat's milk, mixed with decent servings of fish and meat, had been shown in numerous studies to promote longevity. But Mr. Del Duke did not look so healthy. In my opinion, he wasn't getting enough exercise. I saw that he had a substantial belly under his loose fitting shirt. And weight carried around the middle is more deleterious than extra pounds in the butt. Yet, culturally speaking, today men with big butts are considered less desirable than a man with a pot belly, which is no doubt wrong from an evolutionary point of view. I would have liked to have taken his blood pressure. He started by saying that he didn't want to discuss my test scores, but that's all he talked about. For a long time, I didn't say a single word, and that made him talk more, about a lot of nothing. It was hot in his stuffy little office, and as I stared at him, I could see that he was sweating up a storm. Even his beard was starting to look wet. He was getting more and more agitated. As he spoke, small dots of saliva lodged in the corners of his mouth. They were foamy and white. Mr. Del Duke had a large jar of jelly beans on his desk. He didn't offer me any. I don't eat candy, but I was fairly certain he did. I guessed that he had the jelly beans to make it look like he was offering kids a treat, but in actuality, he never did and went on his own jelly bean eating binges. I considered calculating how many were in the glass container. The volume of one jelly bean equals h times pi times d divided by 2 to the power of 2 equals 2 centimeters times 3, 1.5 centimeters divided by 2 to the power of 2 equals 3.375, or 27 divided by 8 cubic centimeters. But jelly beans aren't really perfect cylinders, they are irregular. So this formula was not accurate. It would have been far more fun to me to try to count them by sevens. I haven't told my parents about meeting Principal Psoriasis from Sequoia, or that I would have to see some kind of school parole officer named Del Duke. I'm not sure why. It had been their idea to move schools, and I wanted them to think things were going well, or as well as possible. So I was now officially duplicitous. It didn't feel good. The middle school years were supposed to be, according to the literature, about an emotional separation from parents. I figured lying and laying a good groundwork for that. But it was as if I'd eaten something that was giving me indigestion, and that burning sensation extended beyond my stomach and moved upward where it lodged in my neck, right where I swallowed. My parents didn't know any of my test-taking drama at Sequoia because I destroyed the evidence. I erased the message from the school that was on our home phone voicemail. My parents always forgot to check it, so it wasn't a big deal. But what was more deceitful is that I hacked into my mom's email and answered the principal's note about going to see a district counselor. So I would just have to put up with this stomach queasiness because I deserved it. The round-head counselor warden finally stopped talking. He was worn out. He folded his short arms defensively over his ball of a belly, and then, after more sweaty silence on both our parts, he actually had an idea. I'm going to say a word, and then you say the first word that comes into your head. I'm not saying the word as a question, it's something else. Let's try to do this very quickly. He sucked in a lot of air and added, think of it as a game. Del Duke didn't know that my experience in this arena was very limited. but I have found myself to be shockingly competitive. For the first time since I stepped into the room, I felt mild enthusiasm. He wanted to play a word game. I was certain that I could beat him in chess in fewer than 6 moves, but I have only played against a computer, and not often because chess is one of those things that I can become obsessive with. I know I once played for 24 hours straight and experienced signs of mild psychosis. Mr. Del Duke leaned forward in his chair and dramatically said, "Chocolate." I was interested in the benefits of chocolate, and I said, "Antioxidant." He then tapped his foot like he was accelerating in a car and said, "Piano." I said, "Concerto." The day before, I had heard a kid at school shout to a group of boys in the hall, "Game on." I wanted to shout that now, but it didn't feel appropriate. Mr. Del Duke tried to write down what he said and I said, but he was struggling. Fortunately, he gave up and decided to just play the game. He said space. I said time. He said dark. I said matter. He said big. I said bang. He said car. I said photography. He said mouse. I said wireless. He said white. I said corpuscle. He said single. I said source. He said seed. I said embryo. He said pi. I said 3.14159265358979323846264338327. But I said the number very, very, very fast, and I stopped on the second 7 because, of course, that was my favorite number. Mr. Del Duke then loudly shouted, "You animal!" It scared me. I don't like loud things. I was silent for a long time, but then finally managed to find my voice. I said, "Lemur." And then his eyes grew sort of dazed for an instant, and he mumbled, "Female lemurs are in charge of the troop." This was an accurate statement. If there is conflict in the group, female lemurs are the ones who fight it out. Because of this, the female leader gets the best food and the preferred sleeping area. I now looked at him hard. Not everyone knows that a lemur is a primate found only on the island of Madagascar. It was possible he was not the toadstool that he appeared to be. He then ran both his hands through his curly mop of hair, and that made it double in size. That has happened to my hair before, so I understood. I left the meeting confused. I knew that he knew that I was different. Mr. Del Duke wasn't friend material because he was the wrong age, and female lemurs notwithstanding, we appeared to have absolutely nothing in common. But as I walked away from the district headquarters parking lot, I decided I would come back and see him again. Mr. Del Duke was testing me, but not in the way he thought. I believe he somehow needed me, and I liked the feeling. That night at the dinner table, my mom and dad asked me how it was going at Sequoia. I said, "The experience is evolving." My parents both smiled, but their eyes were still anxious. My mom's voice was tighter than usual, and she said, "Is there anyone special who you've enjoyed meeting?" For the briefest moment, I questioned whether they knew about the aptitude test. I took a bite of my artichoke souffle and finished chewing before answering. "I met someone who interests me." My parents perked up. This was big news for them. Mom tried not to appear too eager. "Can you tell us more?" I had to be careful here. If I didn't want a colossal stomachache, I had to use a version of the truth. This afternoon was my first encounter. Viewed as a clinical trial, I'm in phase 0, which is when microdosing takes place. I'll let you know how it develops. And then I asked to be excused from the table.